Law.
And welcome to another edition of the End Zone, along with Cameron Johnson and Stone Weber. I am Colby Daniels. We are 2 weeks away from week 0 of the college football season kicking off. Week 1, including all of the Oklahoma State schools, 3 weeks away. It is so close. I know we've all been at media days and practices and everything else. You can taste the football in the air.
Yeah, this is the first time I feel like in a while where I feel all 3 teams have the potential to do some really big things this season. So the excitement, while already at a high level, is just a little bit higher this year.
And I know we talked about it before, the workload picking up as well, being able to every school having their local media days and practices open for availability, coaches, players talking. It's really football right around the corner.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of high expectations for the Oklahoma Sooners. There's a lot of big question marks, but also a lot of reasons to be excited. Do you think there's more nervous energy for the Sooner fan base right now, or would you call it cautious optimism? Like, how would you classify where the fan base is with this team? Because again, you need some improvement out of John Mateer. You need big changes offensively, but I think in terms of the personnel, you got to love what they're throwing out there.
I do think you could argue it's nervous energy because, yes, there's a lot to be excited for, especially coming off what they did last year. But the irony of it is, while Brent Venables was on the hot seat last year, he has a really good season. If they revert this year, all of a sudden you might be right back in the same spot. I don't think, though, that there's any reason to be nervous. Obviously, it's really early, but yeah, I could see where that might be a thing.
I think last season you had some cautious optimism. I think this season, though, is just full-on confidence, right? You feel like you have a better roster than you did in 2025. The schedule is difficult, but overall there might be some more favorable matchups in terms of home and away, and Michigan might be a little down even though they have a new head coach. But I would say everyone in the Oklahoma fans are probably full-on confident going into this year thinking, hey, they could be playing for an SEC championship and in the college football playoff once again.
Regardless of where maybe they're significantly better or significantly worse, if they're just a tiny bit better in the run game, you think that impacts so many elements of what could catapult this team into an SEC title run or possibly a college football playoff berth. This has been the storyline really for the last month, right? Every End Zone show that we've done the last month, we've hammered home the run game, but so is Oklahoma. That's the theme of what they're telling us. And this week it was new offensive lineman Emarion Harris, who once again hammered home the point, we got to be able to run the football.
Everybody coming in day to day, just setting that mindset like, all right, we're going to run the damn ball. Like that's our number one thing in the offensive line room is running the damn ball.
I mean, they say the run game is a mentality, right? Mm-hmm. And he used that word mentality. I do get the sense that Bill Bedenbaugh has done his best to put that mentality into the minds of not only the starting 5 or the guys that we anticipate being the starting 5, but that entire position group seems to be, I think, on another level of focus and determination.
Yeah, and I mean, you look back at last season, the run game was such a glaring weakness for the team, and ultimately the difference, I think, in maybe some of those losses could have been gone the other way if you run the ball a little bit better. But I think, to me, if I'm an OU fan, to see every part of the offense buy into improving the run game is a huge relief, and it just feels like they have to be better. Like, given how much they bought into it, surely they will be.
And I think a huge part of that is something Bill Bedenbaugh talked at local media days about is preparing for the Big 12 versus the SEC. The trenches in the SEC are so much different, so much deeper than every other conference in college football. And I think you're also getting a big help from the tight ends as well, right? Having the defensive line go up against just 5 offensive linemen. Last year for Oklahoma, clearly really difficult. If you can get any kind of course, support in the run game, but support from the tight ends on the flip side. They play a huge part in the passing game and the rushing game. If they're able to show up and contribute early, that could play a pivotal role for Oklahoma this season.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk a lot about, Michael Fasusi and Harris at the tackle positions, Foje and Heath Ozeda if he's healthy, and Michaela at center, and Eddie Pierre-Louis. I mean, they've got a lot of bodies that I think they feel confident in playing, but the tight end position is also going to play a massive role in improving that Oklahoma run game. On the other side of the ball, I think there's a lot of star power in all 3 levels, but maybe not as much experienced depth as they had going into the season a year ago. Kip Lewis and some of the newcomers spoke about how camp is going for the defensive side of the football.
We're starting off pretty strong, pretty early than what we did last year. So
take that in with a positive attitude, and everybody started to mesh well together. I told people it was going to take a little while, like in the springtime, it was looking a little iffy, but now it's all starting to connect together. You know, old pieces, new pieces, and we're all just loving each other going out there.
I'm taking on more of a role, a way bigger role, and just trying to become more of a leader. And so I feel like this camp throughout the summer, I've taken a big step, and it's become more enjoyable.
Towards the end of the season last year, I had switched to free so I can like learn both and like be more like in the rotation. So this year, like coming in like off season, I got like deep into the playbook, like knowing what I'm doing. So when we get out there, I won't have no like mess ups. But I'm gonna still have mess ups, but like yeah. But I won't say it's too hard. It's like something that I want to do and like that help me grow.
I'm really curious to see, what the opening game rotations are going to look like, who maybe gets early opportunities. And they're not obviously going to show you everything with Michigan coming up in week 2, but there's I think a lot of young faces on that defensive side of the football, especially that we are anticipating are going to get pretty decent snap counts as the season goes on. Nigel Smith, I think, is one of those, and Amarian Robinson, and his versatility, which is something Brent Venables absolutely values on that side of the football.
One thing I think is really important too, with so many younger players, they had really good role models before them. We heard that said a lot at media days, and that the R. Mason Thomases of it all, they did such a good job of being leaders, not just on the field, off the field too. Basically, they said to when it is your turn to lead, you are ready. So I have confidence that they'll be able to take up the reins, but yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how the rotations end up playing out come game time.
Yeah, and I think the two deep, right? Your first couple of guys in each position, you're probably really confident in, but something that David Stone really touched on, as well as the competitive depth, something that Brent Venables has really been preaching throughout his first couple years at Oklahoma. Yep. Something where a guy like Amarian Robinson and Nigel Smith, those guys need to step up. Of course, these guys come in 4-star, 5-star recruits, lots of potential, lots of upside, but of course, like we said, it's about going out there and getting it done and proving that, and that starts, of course, in the non-conference. Maybe can get in a couple big reps against Michigan and really go from there.
3 weeks away from Oklahoma's season opener, and then on Saturday it'll be the Oklahoma State Cowboys opening at Tulsa. Coming up next, we got to talk about those misfit Cowboys, as Cameron Johnson was at OSU Media Day last week. That's next right here on The End Zone. 3 weeks away from the start of the college football season, a big one in the state of Oklahoma as the Oklahoma State Cowboys will travel to Tulsa, a game they lost a year ago, and play a road game to begin the Eric Morris era of Cowboy football. They have adopted, I guess, a moniker, right? The Misfit Cowboys, as Cameron Johnson spoke with players at OSU Media Day last weekend. Here's what they had to say about embracing that term.
That's a great word to put for us. If you look at this whole team, there's guys like Donovan Green, who was the best tight end coming out of high school, and then there's guys like Wyatt, who played quarterback in high school. So it's kind of guys from all over who just love football and want to go out there and compete.
We put Misfits on the back of our shirts during Pirates Paradise, and I truly think that's all this team is. It's a bunch of guys that nobody really expects us to do what we have our heads set to do, and I think that's going to be our edge this season.
We try to praise that, we're all from different places, but we're all going to come together and have a big bond, a familyhood around here.
There you go. I mean, different teams use different terms, but pretty much everybody in the country has some sort of slogan that kind of becomes the rallying point. Like for Oklahoma a year ago, it was hard to kill, right? Misfits, they all seem to embrace it. They all seem to like it. And if it creates some sort of unity, I think it's a job well done by Eric Morris.
Absolutely. Normally when you see a roster has almost more than 80 new players, you kind of sit there a little cautious, like, what are we going to get? But the fact that the team has bought into it and is using that to their advantage, it's interesting, too, when you go back to last season. There were a lot of new players then as well, but the vibes seem to be kind of, we're going to do the best with what we have, whereas this year it feels like we have the pieces to do some big things. We understand we all need to come together, and so far it sounds like they've done that.
And we're about 3 or 4 years into this process of the transfer portal really being what it is now. And you look at when Brent Venables took over at Oklahoma, right, bringing in an entire new roster, it was almost unheard of, right? And now here, Oklahoma State and Eric Morris, they're a little bit more familiar. College football teams know how to use the portal. They know what they want. Eric Morris talked about as well, they want to bring in a lot of experience, right? Doesn't matter what kind of level of football they're playing, could be D2, could be JUCO, bringing in guys who have just played a lot of football, a lot of experience comes in and helps. And this is a group where they have players all over the field who have a ton of experience.
Yeah, I do think they have a lot of talented football players, but typically there is also a little bit of a curve when you're playing a higher level of competition. I thought Wyatt Young had an interesting answer in terms of how he views the competition he faced at UNT versus the Big 12.
Sky's the limit. I think we can be the best offense in the country, no doubt about it. I think we can keep it rolling from what we did last year at North Texas. People talk about the skill difference between the Big 12 and the American, and there's so many guys from P5 that transfer up to P4 now that, it's the same game to me.
There you go. I think he's right when it comes to his position and maybe the skill positions. That gap from maybe the Big 12 to G5 conferences isn't very significant. The problem is the positions he doesn't play on the line of scrimmage, that's where typically the gap shows up, and that's part of the reason why there's so many question marks around how good Oklahoma State is going to be. They have the skill players to make a lot of plays if they have the time to make those plays, and defensively, if they can dominate the line of scrimmage and not be on the field all day long. So he's right to a degree, but I think where it really counts on the line of scrimmage is where that gap is the most significant.
Yeah, I would agree. And in the world of NIL, your conferences don't matter as much anymore. To your point, anyone can do anything if they have the tools to go out and get the talent. But yeah, your offense is only as successful as the offensive line allows you to be. So if that's like you said, the real test is, can they match the physicality of, at the end of the day, a conference that probably has a little bit bigger of guys, more of a talent gap than at that level, but we'll see.
And I think it also helps, we've talked about it before, playing in the Big 12 as compared to maybe a Big 10 or an SEC. Not so much great teams at the top. There's a lot more. The talent gap is maybe not so large as a couple of those other conferences. I think that helps Oklahoma State. And also, you're looking at it, you look on the flip side of these high-profile, prolific offenses that can score, that play fast. On the flip side of that, if you're scoring every single possession, your defense is going to be out there a lot more. And I think, that's something where Oklahoma State's going to have to learn, okay, maybe we can try and slow things down a little bit to get this defense, which, of course, a lot more of the unproven side of things can get them, under their feet and get a little bit more settled into the environment in the Big 12.
It's going to be an exciting week one as they play Tulsa. Cameron Johnson and Spencer Tillis spoke with Trey Lamb, the head coach of the Golden Hurricane, as he reflected on his first season in Tulsa.
First year, had to bring in a lot of transfers, which is not my plan moving forward, just because of what I took over. And when I walked in the building, there wasn't much here left. Most guys had left or graduated, and a little bit out of necessity having to take that many. I thought we made a lot of progress on the field. We were in a lot of football games, had a chance to win probably 7 or 8 football games, ended up winning 4 of them, winning some games that I didn't think we would win, and losing some games I thought we would win. But yeah, I thought we closed the gap. The talent gap was closed. I thought the coaching gap was closed. I thought our kids played hard. And I think we made some big strides.
Is this a year that Tulsa can compete for a title?
The 3 greatest deciding factors in winning: schedule, quarterback play, turnover margin. After that, there's a ton of factors, right? But those are the 3 that I emphasize the most, and I think we've caught a decent schedule. I think you're catching some new head coaches, some new quarterbacks, right? The league's up for grabs. I think there's a few teams that have more resources than everybody else, but the rest of the jobs are very similar. So I think there's nothing but air and opportunity ahead of us over these next 13, 14 weeks.
Absolutely cannot wait for that week one matchup, and I would circle that as one of the best week one matchups in terms of what it means for both teams participating in the game in the entire country. So that should be a really fun one. All right, we got to take a timeout. A Thunder legend has called it quits after 18 seasons. We'll say goodbye to Russell Westbrook next, right here on The End Zone. I know we're coming up on the football season, and everybody is football right now, but Russell Westbrook, Thunder legend, icon, fashionista, has called it quits after 18 seasons. I kind of felt like he was probably going to find maybe a home for one more year. Didn't turn out that way, and maybe the offers were out there and nothing, really lit a fire under him. But it's pretty crazy to see Russell Westbrook calling it a career. It doesn't feel like it's been 18 years when you think his first season was in OKC, and now a guy that essentially made triple doubles boring has retired, and obviously one of the all-time Thunder greats.
It feels weird to say. I mean, for someone my age, that is kind of the one of the main players of my generation, at least since I came into consciousness and watching basketball. But yeah, I mean, he was just so fun to watch, and you hate to see him ultimately kind of go into nomad mode the last few years of his career, especially given everything he did. But I think he's one of those guys that Thunder fans are always going to look back on fondly, as opposed to maybe some of his teammates. But yeah, what a career.
One of the greatest Thunder players of all time. As of right now, probably the greatest Thunder player of all time. There could be some debate up there in the next couple of years, but what a career from Russell Westbrook, and really, his time in Oklahoma City, of course, the legendary, arguably maybe the most dominant MVP season of all time. Got incredibly disrespected these last couple of seasons. A nickname that had no reason to be going out there. A man who, when he was on the basketball floor, you knew where he was at all times, could rebound, could pass, could score in all different kinds of ways, and truly a dominant playmaker.
I remember, I believe it was his second year, I'm at Media Day, and UCLA football had just beat Texas football in like week 1 or week 2 of the season, and he's just giving it to Kevin Durant behind the scenes, and I just happened to be standing there, and it was such a cool moment, and that was one of the more playful sides of Russell Westbrook, which I think, in terms of media, we got a lot more serious version of Russell Westbrook for the majority of his career, but behind the scenes, I think always had a pretty big smile on his face. And I will also remember the first time Kevin Durant came back to Oklahoma City. That first game, Oklahoma City, Golden State, Kevin Durant comes out to boos, and I mean, I'm standing on the floor. It rains down boos like you've never heard, and I thought this might be the loudest I've ever heard this arena. And then that was surpassed moments later when Russell Westbrook was introduced, and the pop inside the Paycom Center was just unbelievable. And you knew everybody was, they already loved him, but they embraced him even more with Kevin Durant's departure and his choice to commit to OKC long term. And I mean, he'll always be, I think, one of OKC's favorite sons, regardless of whether he's the best or what else maybe Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in this version of the Thunder accomplishes. Russell Westbrook will have his number, maybe a statue or something in Oklahoma City to wrap up his career. But 18 years in the NBA, 1 MVP, 9-time All-Star, and a future NBA Hall of Famer. All right, it is the closing argument coming up next right here on The End Zone. Wrapping up The End Zone this week, we are just a couple weeks away from college football games being played, and especially in the state of Oklahoma, I know both Sooner fans and Cowboy fans are thrilled. That is Noble McIntyre. I'm Colby Daniels. It is time for this week's edition of the closing argument. So let's stick toward OU for a moment, because there's a lot of talk about expectations, and last year Oklahoma absolutely surpassed preseason expectations. This year the expectations are a lot higher, so I will pose the question, what do you think are the realistic expectations? And then off of that, what would be considered a disappointing season, and what would be considered a Brent Venables hot seat disappointing season?
I think any year that fans look at Oklahoma and think we've regressed at all is a disappointing season. Last year, you're right, we outperformed. We were 10-3. But if you end this year at 9-4 and you don't get double-digit wins, that's going to be a disappointment. If you end up at 8 wins, I don't care if those 4 or 5 losses were by 1 point at the last second. Brent Venables, his hot seat is scorching hot. So I think you have to have at minimum a 10-win season. I really think you better have 11. And for Oklahoma, because we want championships.
That's right.
We're comparing ourselves against everybody, and the way you do that is you win.
I think in this modern era of college football, unfortunately, coaches and players for that matter don't get enough time to maybe, mold things into what their vision is. I mean, you have to have less patience and you need immediate results, and that can also go the other way. You get immediate results, you can't dip tremendously or that seat really gets hot. And the amount of money that is also being pumped into these college football programs, and Oklahoma, I think to the fan base's credit, has really done everything they can to give Oklahoma the resources to compete. So coming off that college football playoff disappointment, I'm with you, if they don't surpass that, I think there's going to be a lot of angry fans. The hot seat conversation, for me, probably 7 wins. I don't know that anybody is saying that he's going to get fired if they win 8, but 7 or below, I can imagine that being a real conversation.
I mean, 7, there will be for sale signs in front of his house.
Yes.
So he'd better win more than 7. He better win more than 8.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Just a couple weeks away as Oklahoma opens on a Friday night. And again, they have one of the toughest schedules in all of college football. Number 2, according to the ESPN FBI. That is Noble McIntyre. I am Colby Daniels. We'll see you next week on The End Zone.